In many ways, you could say that the book of Ecclesiastes is largely a negative focused book. And yet, it's not entirely that way. And sometimes the negative focus is to draw us closer to the positive focus that you do find in the book. In chapter 5, for instance, in verse 13, you find that he calls something a severe evil. He will repeat that phrase again in verse 16. But then when you come to the last 3 verses of the chapter, after he has largely talked about the evils, the severe evils of wealth, and how that money can sometimes do much more harm than good if it's misused and misapplied. When you come to the last 3 verses, though, you will find that he will use the word rejoice, enjoy, and joy. And then twice, he will use the word gift, or give and gift, in such a way that we now have a very different perspective on material things, because up to this point in the chapter, that's basically what has been the criticism about and the negative ideas about the misuse and abuse of material things and money. And yet now he will say in verse 18, here is what I have seen, based on all of this that's been so bad and gone so wrong so far. But now here's what I've seen. It is good and fitting. Now he will change the tone and he will change the perspective. It is good and fitting. What's good and fitting? For one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor, in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life, in which God gives him, for it is his heritage. Some translations say, or footnotes say, it is his portion. He continues to say, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage or portion, and rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. The chapter then will conclude by saying, for he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart. Again, the perspective here is about, instead of the misuse and the abuse of material things, it's the right perspective. Viewing these as gifts from God. Things that God has given us to use in a way that's productive and helpful to bring us joy. You know, it's one thing to have something, it's another thing to have something and rejoice and be glad and happy about having it. And notice he says it's the gift of God, and that when we take that gift with the right perspective, we will not dwell unduly on the days of our life. In other words, we will not have a life where, as we continue to grow older, all we find ourselves doing is complaining. There's not much to enjoy there. No, instead, we will focus on the gift of God, and we will focus on rejoicing on the gifts God has given us.